for this year's event. The Spring Spatial Planning for Regions and Growing Economy Alumni is a collective of professionals from various backgrounds related to the planning sector. But before we move forward, I would like to take a moment to remember Professor Teodoro Kausul, or Theo, as many of us have known him. Theo was one of our most distinguished professors at the University Austral Chile. His demise has us all in shock, but his legacy lives on through the people who have been fortunate enough to know him. He was a mentor to many of us, and his love, care, and wisdom will be missed during this conference and, of course, in many of our lives. Angela Morales, a former Spring coordinator from Chile, is going to now say a few words about him. Vince?
Yes, I think I'm sorry, before I start, I'm co-host now.
Yeah, that's fine, that's okay.
That's okay.
Don't worry. Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon for everybody. I was the Spring coordinator from 2009 till 2019 for some, maybe somebody doesn't know me, and I'm here just to give a few words about our beloved Professor Kausul, who left us on just this Wednesday. I'm going to read a few words because I'm still very emotional about it. I met him in September 2009 when I started to work as his assistant in the Spring program here in the Universidad Austral de Chile. From the very beginning, I felt we were a perfect match. He wanted to make this world a better place to live. And I was very curious about how to do it with 5 students in a classroom. It was sound kind of rare at the beginning. But I'm sure he accomplished that little by little, step by step, class after class. He managed to plant a seed in our hearts. Every batch we closed, it was sad. It was always sad to say goodbye. But also it was rewarding. We knew more seeds were going far, far away from Valdivia. And this is his gift for us, his legacy. And this is how we can dimension the huge impact of his wisdom, his intellectual curiosity, his kindness, and his generosity. Spring Chile is a family, and it's because of him, because this was not a regular academic job. He put his soul on it. And I'm proud and grateful to have the chance of being part of that. I'm not working at the faculty anymore, but I will remain part of this family, for sure. I want to thank Mahmouda, Vincent, and Mary Grace, and Aurelia for inviting me to share these words and these feelings with you. And to the end, I just can say that as long as we remember him and we keep inspired by him, Professor Kausul will be with us. Thank you. Mahmouda, your mic, it's off.
Thank you, Angela, for these really kind words. Of course, you know, we all learned a lot from him. And the best thing is that we must remember his beautiful smile and move on. So thank you.
Mahmouda, we could show some pictures.
Mm-hmm. We may take a moment of silence and just, we'd like to share a few parts of his life with you. In July 2019, the Spring Alumni had their first winter school, an event organized by the Spring Alumni and members of the Spring International Association of Development Planners. The theme was evolving dynamics and linkages to support the achievement of 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development Goals 11 and 13, Sustainable Cities and Communities, and Climate Action. In addition to the multi-stakeholder roundtables, we interacted with the local communities and were able to recommend a proposal on how to manage the community wetland parks. This year, we continue this endeavor with a conference about a more pressing matter. The world continues to grapple with the COVID-19 pandemic and its implications. According to the UN Sustainable Development Report 2020, COVID-19 is reversing decades of progress on poverty, healthcare, and education. An estimated 71 million people are expected to be pushed back into extreme poverty by the end of this year. This conference brings together practical experiences and theoretical reflections on planning policies, guidelines, and practices in light of COVID-19. The sessions focus on SDG 1, 2, 3, 4, and 11, which are zero hunger, no poverty, good health and well-being, and sustainable cities and communities. The objective of the conference is to have a deeper understanding of how these practices contribute to emerging transformative planning approaches and resilient regional spatial development. The results of the dialogue and workshop sessions will be compiled as planning recommendations in hope to better handle future pandemics. We've worked extremely hard to put this together, and we hope it can reap the results that are practical, beneficial, and inclusive. In the 3-day conference, we start today with the opening session, followed by workshop sessions tomorrow, and the conference will be wrapped on Sunday with the concluding dialogue. We will share the results with you in the coming months. After the remarks, our moderator for today, Moritz Kasper, will continue the opening session on the theme Build Back Better, the recovery and future of markets, public spaces, and formal economy. A little bit about Moritz. Moritz is currently working as a doctoral researcher and lecturer at the Department of International Planning Studies of the School of Spatial Planning at TU Dortmund. Over the past 10 years, he has engaged in projects in depth research and research design transfers with international organizations, big and small NGOs, and government entities in Europe and Africa. As an urban scholar and geographer at heart, he has the knack for engaging in quantitative to experimental to artistic research on everything urban, especially but not in the so-called global south. Now for the welcome remarks, I would like to invite Dr. Cesar Huala, Vice Dean, Faculty of Economic Sciences and Administration at the University OBSUR in Valdivia, and Professor Carmelita Livag, Spring Program Coordinator, University of Philippines, School of Urban and Regional Planning. We're delighted to have you both from our partner universities. And after the welcome remark, the screen is all yours, Moritz. Thank you and welcome. We hope you'll enjoy.
Should I start? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I wrote your name, Mehmuda. Is that right?
Mehmuda. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity, for sending you all the best in this couple of sessions. You're gonna meet again for discussing very, very important issues, you know, and academic aspects of the development and local development around the world. First of all, I'd like to say, I want to give the greetings from the Dean, Professor Juan Carlos Miranda, who unfortunately, he really wanted to be here today, but unfortunately, he's facing some issue, some problem, health problem issues. So he asked me to come on his behalf to, and attend on his behalf to wish you all the best for a couple of days. For the faculty, this program, Spring, is quite important for us. And I have to say, very briefly, I'd like to do a little bit of history of this, mentioning that over the beginning of the last decade, in the 2000s, we agreed this MOU with the University of Dortmund for carrying out this program in Valdivia at Universidad Austral. And it is quite relevant when you do this sort of story to highlight those ones that make this beautiful journey possible. And it's not, I mean, it's quite relevant for us to highlight the names of Professor Robinson Ampuero, Jose Escaida, and of course, Professor Teodoro Kausel, who were a very important part of putting up this program together and take it up to the place where the program is at the moment. Theo was an amazing professor. Actually, I remember being and doing my undergraduate students back by the 90s. And the first time I've heard from the sustainable concept, I'm telling you 92, 93, was from Theo. And today, I'm so glad that the session started recognizing him and showing us the best of his life, which was the happiness. I would say that today is a day for celebrating his life. And I would say, and it's quite evident here, that this session for sure, and this couple of days are gonna probably be on his memory. So thank you very much for also joining us in remembering him on this way. Having mentioned a little bit of this history of the program, that is not possible not to highlight some really, really important people over the last 5 or 7 years, which is the time I've been at the university, and that have been involved in the program. So no way that I'm not going to highlight the commitment and all the involvement Anne Beder has done for and all the energies she had put for the program. Felix Fuders, who it's been the program's director for the last few years, and of course all the punch and all the energy Angela Morales put on making all of this happening and making, you know, all the connections for having our students more than welcome at the faculty and at the university. So thank you very much, guys, for your commitment and for your energy on this. For us, it's quite important. For the faculty, the spring program is probably, and not because I'm in this session, I'm gonna say something that is quite true for us, it's probably one of the most important program that we have had. And one of the reasons on that argument is based on the fact that this is the first program actually for us that has allowed us to move forward into internationalization of the faculty. We have received over 80 students since the program started from many different countries in many different places, from Eastern Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, and so on. So this has been a quite important contribution for us. Learning from them, it's been important not only for the academic process, but also it's been quite important for us as academics as well, in order to get in connection with scholars from other countries and moving forward in order to have a broader and more comprehensive perspective on regional development, local development, decentralization, and issues related to planning. Our relationship with Alemania also is quite important in this context. Just to remember, this program also relates to some previous efforts Professor Kausel also led in order to make Germany closer to us. And an example of that is a big project that was carried over the 90s and beginning of the 2000s in an agreement with the Germany Cooperation Agency. We call it GTZ, but I was looking at the name now. I think it changed. And if I try to mention GTZ and Germany, probably I'm gonna sound a little bit ridiculous here trying to say the words. So I'm so sorry for that. Unfortunately, last year, we received the last bunch of students coming from this agreement with Dortmund University in the context of Spring. So we agreed a commitment at that point. And that was not losing the chance of, not losing the chance of keeping Spring moving forward. Anne, I'm just telling you now, I'm passing you the information. The agreement is under the Chancellor's office at the moment. I just sent it last week. And in another very good news is that today we are submitting the project for creating the Spanish version of Spring, which we aim to start over the next semester. Of course, we need to go through we need to undergo the process of approval from the Chancellor's office and postgraduate studies, but we're moving forward. We have had lots of meetings to achieve some sort of commitment from the university, and we're submitting the final project today for final discussion and approval over the next, I would say, next few weeks. So having said that words, there is no more that I'd like to say than giving you or wishing you all the best for this couple of days. The contribution coming up from here, it's not only globally important, but also for our country at the moment, it's quite important because all the contributions coming up might be a good feedback for the decentralization process we're facing over the next few years, but also for an eventual process of a new constitution we may have built over the next couple of years. So thank you very much for this invitation. All the best for these couple of days of hard work, and that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cesar. That's some very, very positive news from Valdivia and Chile. So thanks a lot. Looking forward to all of it. I would like to invite Carmelita Livar now.
Yes, hello. Okay, first of all, good evening from the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, in my capacity as the Spring Asia Coordinator, I would like to convey to all of you participating in this conference our heartfelt welcome. Communities constantly face evolving issues and new challenges, such as the current global pandemic crisis, which brings more attention to the perennial issues of instabilities in economic activities, weak health systems, food insecurity, and growing socioeconomic disparities. Understanding the impact of COVID-19 is accompanied by an increased pressure for communities to deliver better public services and policies for adequate shelter, clean water, electricity, efficient public transportation, health, education, and public safety, among others. However, traditional and business as usual solutions prove to be no longer sufficient to respond to the most pressing problems facing our communities today, thus triggering a demand for new urban models and approaches that shall adapt to the changing culture and environment of these communities. But how do we stay ahead and relevant during these times? Cliche as it may sound, our pursuit to see through this situation is here. Celebrating in this unified call to respond to the global pandemic towards a sustainable and resilient future. A challenging situation that called us all together is still an opportune time for us to build back stronger. May this fruitful endeavor through our online reunion, and I think this is the first one, initiated by Spring Chile, no? That we set another milestone for us, spatial or environmental planners, to stand up together and help build a better world and future for everyone. Again, good evening from Manila, Philippines. Good morning, good afternoon there in Germany. And thank you very much. Mabuhay from Manila, Philippines.
Thank you, Carmelita. And now, hopefully diving into the session with lots of positivity. Moritz, the screen is all yours.
Thank you very much, Mahmouda. Thank you also for the first introduction. Thanks to Cesar for the introduction into the importance of spring and international cooperation again. Carmelita for the great first overview about the diverse, complex challenges that communities face in this year in particular. I want to make it short. We are starting our first session here on the general topic of Build Back Better, with a focus on the Sustainable Development Goal number 11, namely sustainable cities and communities. We have a diverse set of speakers, 3 in total, that will talk about the recovery and future of markets, public space, and the informal economy. There will be a Q&A at the end of 20 to 25 minutes. I asked everyone who has a question to send me questions directly to me in the chat. I will collect these questions, ask them at the end, and we will have time during that also to still collect some more questions if you have some. I will introduce each of the speakers right before their single presentation. The first presentation will be by Dr. Jennifer Lenhart. She is the global lead of WWF Cities of the World Wildlife Fund. She holds a PhD in environmental policy and climate governance from Wageningen University, with a total of 15 years of experience in addressing urban environmental challenges via holistic approaches to sustainable development. She is also a blogger, educator, and even more. So I would ask Jennifer to get ready. We're very much looking forward to your presentation, and as long as you are possible to share your screen now, I would like to switch to Jennifer.
Hello, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. Can I just ask if you can see my screen now?
Yes, very well.
Perfect. Okay, well, I just want to say I am not from the Spring Alumni Program. I really enjoyed the tribute to your professor, and I was just Googling a little bit about your program. All those photos reminded me so much of my master's program, which was very much an integrated Erasmus Mundus program in Central European University, Lund University, and University of Lesvos in Greece and Manchester as well. So it's a similar vibe, and I think I'm in good company here. I will also preface by saying I am not a spatial planner. So mind you, I'm coming from the policy space, but I think we have a lot of overlap here. So if I'm correct, Moritz, I have about 15 minutes to go through a few ideas of what WWF has been doing.
Exactly.
Excellent. And so within this idea of building back better, I want to focus really on the public space aspect of it, and in particular cities and also landscapes. Now, as Moritz said, I am the global lead for the WWF Cities program, officially part of the WWF Sweden office, although anchored in the Chile office and sitting right now in Santiago. So definitely a global background as well as the rest of you here. So, I mean, a question perhaps to start out with would, why would an organization like WWF, so focused on conservation, have such an interest in cities? Well, for us, it comes down to a few key numbers. 55% of the global population is living in cities, almost 70% in the next 10 or so years. Cities occupying between 2 and 3% of land mass, and yet responsible for 70% of carbon emissions, roughly 75% of natural resource consumption. And in particular for my team at WWF, they are essential for meeting the Paris Agreement and the 1.5 degrees Celsius target, given all of this space here. So at WWF, and we saw this year, even before COVID, we saw this as a critical turning point year when we look at the policy processes coming forward, when we look at the Paris Agreement, when we look at the CBD on conservation, biological diversity, climate, biodiversity, everything is really taking an intersection through cities as a problem and an opportunity space. And then COVID hit. And I don't have to explain to you what that feels like, because this is a global solidarity. We have all been struggling. We've all been, our minds have been opened. We have connected. We've been frustrated. But interestingly, according to the UN Secretary General, as well as several of his key leads on different areas, including on disaster risk reduction, between 90 and 95% of COVID cases have actually been happening in cities. So we need to look at this also as an urban challenge and an urban opportunity. And just to remember that before COVID, cities were already unhealthy. They suffered from, car-centric planning, which leads to sedentary lifestyles, congestion, air pollution, poor urban planning. I mean, all of these issues. So this is really a wake-up call. And we've seen how much we have suffered, but we also need to see how can we build back better. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So this is the city, I used to work for the city of Malmö in the south of Sweden. And we put these up a few years ago for a festival. And we asked people to look, envision, what could your future city look like? Where there are car spaces, where can we put in urban parks? What if we redesigned our city around the bicycle in order to make streets for people and nature more than cars? And it's important to remember that in an average city, between 40 and 60% of public space is dedicated to cars, not to people. And this is, of course, for parking, for highways, for roads, for everything, but not for people. And so this also brings in an equity perspective as well as an economic development perspective here. Now we talk about urban sprawl. It has often 3 times the public service cost. Of course, it's hugely detrimental in terms of conversion of farmland, grasslands, and forests, which is also very important for us at WWF as well. So really, how can we redesign our cities in order to think in a more holistic planning approach? And what we've seen with COVID is we've also seen, despite the struggle, we've seen some really great shifts and changes, whether it's better urban mobility, cities from Milan to London to Santiago to Bogota to Seattle to New York, so many, and maybe your cities as well, really pushing the bicycle. And this is about, more resilient people, healthier lifestyles, lower air pollution. It's also about, reconnecting with space. So this is just a few blocks away from where I'm living in Santiago, and I was so excited to see streets for people popping up to allow local restaurants to economically recover. And I imagine this might be the case in your countries as well. But this is, why do we dedicate so much space to cars? Why can't we dedicate more space to people? Quieter streets, greener streets, healthier streets, and air quality. I mean, we've seen this in the images from Delhi to Milan. Here is in Santiago, and well, why am I in Chile? My husband is Chilean. And we were walking at the beginning of the pandemic, and he kept turning around to look at the mountains. And I said, well, I'm a mountain lover, and I know that you see the mountains now more that I've moved here. But he said, I've never seen them so clearly. I've never seen the contours in the mountains so clearly. And when we take cars off the road, we can see a huge change in our cities. This is not to say that there's one solution. Definitely, it's complex problems and we need complex strategies to work on this. But already today, and this is really crucial to remember, that 90% of city dwellers are breathing polluted air. According to the World Health Organization and other partners, that's up to 7 million or more deaths per year. We hear a lot about the death rates of COVID, but we don't talk enough about the death rates from air pollution related illnesses. And our children are even more vulnerable in terms of the rapid breathing that they do, which means that they're running around, they're breathing in air quickly, so they're more vulnerable to air pollution. It's not just about air pollution though, but especially in cities and how we move around our cities, traffic is one of the largest contributors, certainly to air pollution, but also to climate change. So how can we really rethink our planning structures when we move into the cities of the future? So this is something that we put together last year in WWF before COVID, but just trying to draw the link between climate change and air pollution in terms of how we move around our cities. So we took globally relevant data and we looked at what is the average commute time. It's about 30 minutes. What is the average commute distance? It's around 12 kilometers. Well, in that same amount of time, roughly 500 people die from air pollution related diseases globally. About 285 million, that's the cost of the social cost of both illness and death from air pollution. At that same time, we're putting $268 million every 30 minutes into fossil fuel subsidies. But the good news is we can go 12 kilometers on an electric bike or up to 8 kilometers on a conventional bike in that same time. And doing so, of course, is much better for our health, reduces our stress. I can tell you, I love my bicycle, and certainly is helping to make for more robust, longer lives. And of course, we need to connect, where is that air quality coming from? It's coming back from Mother Nature. So if we have greener streets, we can also help to address the air pollution problem. So I want to just, envision with you what our communities, what our cities could look like if we allowed more space for people, allowed more space for slower transportation models, greener streets, more beautiful places to live. And so this is something that we're trying to work with in WWF. We're starting to push towards enhancing biological corridors in cities in order to connect cities and ecosystems for urban resilience, as well as for healthy, active, and equitable communities. Certainly, I know you talked about SDG 11, but doing so addresses many of the other SDGs as well. And I think just to kind of zoom out and look at some of the global data here, historically, cities have always been close to nature because when we started settling down as humans, we needed to be close to resources. So this is sort of we are always going to be connected to places with a lot of natural resources. And by 2030, up to 40% of protected areas could be within 50 or just over 50 kilometers from cities. So we really need to get urban planning right. We need to get spatial planning right in order to also conserve these beautiful nature places that we do love. We need to also connect our cities and our parks, and they need to be equitably accessed, not just for parts of the city, but for the whole city to have access to nature. So we're starting to work much more in the nature-based solutions work within WWF. We definitely work at the landscape level, but we want to also bring this into the city space. And why do we see this important? Certainly for resilience, but also even a little bit for climate mitigation. If we talk about the role of street trees, for example, to address urban heat island and heat waves, and especially when we start to look at increasing interest to have air conditioning and cooling systems. So how can trees be the best solution for this versus an air conditioning unit? And the urgency is very much there for us. So this is from a climate conference a few years ago that we put together, but really pushing for, we do not want to beat the 1.5 degrees Celsius target. It is a business as usual case looking at cities. Cities are warming at a faster rate than the global average due to urban heat island. Beijing, for example, could rise by several degrees of warming. I think it's up to 7 degrees. So it's really catastrophic when you think about the urban landscape if we don't bring in nature into our planning. And especially now that COVID has brought this to the agenda, how can we really push it forward with growing momentum? Just a few, I'm not going to go through all the data here, but for WWF, this is very important. What is the difference between a 1.5 degree and a 2 degree global warming scenario? What I will say, and I will share the slides afterwards, but I will just say that every ½ degree of global warming matters. We need to meet the Paris Agreement. We cannot exceed it. We need to get to the 1.5 degree target. It is incredibly difficult, but it is certainly possible, and it requires all of us. So within WWF, we have something called the One Planet City Challenge, where we work with cities to do their data reporting. We do this on the global CDP ECLE platform. So these are two of the, the biggest city networks and also data collection networks. And we take that data that they use and we see how closely they are aligned to the Paris Agreement. So we look at their data and we say, you are close to a 1.5 degree target based on what you've already done, your plans, your trajectories, your commitments. And then we work with cities to help guide them there. If you want to know more about this, I'm very much happy to tell you. And we have colleagues working on this program. And
I think we have a technical problem with the connection.
Yes, I think we have lost Jennifer. Apologies for the technical issues. Somebody from the technical team, could you check if it's on her side?
I'm afraid it's on her side, so I hope she will be able to join us again in a minute.
Okay. Yeah, well, this is what's happening in a pandemic world with all the Zoom conferences and calls. I'm happy that we already could get such a compelling input from her side. I would say we give her like 2 minutes or so, or 1 or 2 minutes. And if she doesn't rejoin, then I would switch to Antonio's presentation first, and we can see if she's still coming in again. Jennifer, in case you're coming back in, let us know. Otherwise, it was already a great first input, in my opinion.
I'm so sorry. I'm back, but I was just wrapping up. I lost internet. So very sorry for that. But I think my final point was just that the urgency to address the biological crisis as well as the climate crisis and see COVID as an inroads to do so. But I will share the slides, and very sorry for that.
No, no problem. I think we all know far too well situations like this over the last half a year. So no worries. Thank you very much for a great first input, connecting the dots between sustainability, urban issues, COVID, and I would just jump right to Antonio's presentation, and we can kind of like connect the dots between the presentations later on. So briefly, an introduction. Our next speaker is Dr. Antonio Zumelzu. He is a professor and academic at the Institute of Architecture and Urbanism of the Faculty of Architecture and Arts at Austral University of Chile. He's also visiting professor at the Doctorate in Architecture and Urbanism of the University of Bio. He holds a PhD in Sustainable Planning from the Technical University of Eindhoven. And in his research, he's primarily exploring various sustainability criteria for the construction of new methodologies and tools for assessing the built environment of intermediate cities in southern Chile. I hope my introduction was correct, and we are all very much looking forward to your presentation on mental well-being and the influence of place in times of COVID. Okay, so thank you very much, and the stage is yours.
Thank you, Moritz, and thank you very much also for the invitation. I'm very happy to be part of this interesting version of Spring Alumni Conference 2020, this time by Zoom. During this last year in OBSUR, our research has been focused to explore relationship between sustainability and built environment in mid-sized cities in southern Chile, to evaluate the potential of neighborhoods to be catalysts for a more sustainable development. My presentation today basically consists to show what we are starting to do now in this line to contribute with new knowledge about the built environment and its potential impacts on mental well-being in public spaces. Through a bibliometric analysis, we have proposed a conceptual framework for redesign public spaces to impact not only the improvement of local planning instruments, but also to promote healthier and more sustainable environments in Chilean neighborhoods and cities. So I will show you in brief part of this research today. The Sustainable Development Agenda of United Nations supports in his third objective and 11th objective that health and well-being includes to guarantee a healthy life and promoting the well-being of all at all ages in cities. Similarly, the new urban agenda adopted in Habitat 3 recognizes not only fundamental links between health and urban environment, but also reflect the importance of how environments can positively influence on people's well-being. Improving health policies is not just a matter of health professionals, but also urban planning and design have a responsibility to promote healthy settlements. In Chile at present, there are worrying data regarding people's well-being. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, Chile ranks 33 out of a total of 36 countries evaluated in a ranking based of a series of indicators that are considered in well-being of population, life satisfaction, the care of physical and mental health, and especially the quality of the environment of surroundings in which one lives are those that recommend greater attention. In this sense, the social demand and strokes that have emerged in last October in Chile claims these concepts as rights, as well as the needs to live with greater equity, dignity, and environmental balance. On the other hand, the appearance of COVID-19 pandemic and its impact in cities has generated adverse events for society, envisioning precariousness and vulnerability of the built environment in which the condition of mental well-being of people are deteriorating readily and significantly. In this context, several authors argued that a large part of the cause lie in the accelerated process of urbanization and excessive building verticalization, with negative impacts, spatial effects that are directly affecting the urban life of inhabitants. In turn, a growing body of evidence suggests that these changes have a negative influence on people's mental well-being. Problems such as stress and anxiety, moods in general, and life satisfaction are some aspects of mental well-being influenced by the physical quality of the environment. According to the Encyclopedia of Quality of Life and Well-being Research, well-being is defined as the human experience and optimal psychological functioning, which involves subjective experiences and objective conditions indicative of physical, mental, and social type. From psychology, mental well-being is a subjective indicator that consists of three components. Hedonic well-being affects a person's emotions with reference to a particular point of time, derived from immediate experiences. Eudaimonic well-being is linked to the performance of altruistic activities and the achievement of long-term symbolic rewards. And life satisfaction is a cognitive component that refers to a global assessment of life rather than a current feelings or specific symptomatic symptoms, with the closest functioning domains being personal relationships, work stability, residence, incomes, among other factors. Our methodology is a barometric analysis carried out by scientific production associated with built environment and mental well-being. This was done by two tools, HighSites and BossViewer tools that allow to analyze in detail the region of many data that are described in this figure. We use a case study of Web of Science database, recognized with a prestige in scientific community. The selection ranged from 1975 to 2020 from the construction of the conceptual framework. Thematic axes were identified by categorizing the publications by number of incidents and affinity in these themes observed of the analysis of concurrence of keywords. This makes also possible to analyze where research of mental well-being and the built environment is concentrated and what are the main themes and concepts addressed from the scientific literature in planning. Results show that the identification analysis of more than 300 articles, 1,000 authors, more than 200 journals, 40,000 sites references, 1,300 keywords, and different scientific production of more than 53 countries around the world. The evolution regarding the number of cities, of sites per year shows an upward trend with increased considerable from 2012 and 2016 respectively. The largest scientific production also is concentrated in countries of North America, Europe, Oceania, and Asia, being also those that produce high impact research. Categories that produce the high total number of publications correspond to public environmental health categories, followed by environmental science and environmental studies, while from the geography, planning, and urban studies categories, research of mental well-being is quite low. This table shows the journals with highest number of publication, being International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, and sustainability, those with the highest number of citations within the time range analyzed. In relation to the concurrence keywords analysis, systematic access related to mental well-being and built environment are defined. Green areas, density, walkability, environmental noise, spatial design, and social interaction were categorized by a number of incidents and affinity in the observed themes. Therefore, we propose this access as conceptual framework to be applied in southern spaces in Chile, which we will discuss below. According to this evidence, green areas can offer measurable benefits for mental well-being and mental health in cities, which we classify into 3 levels, each with implication for urban design. First, the visualization of nature by residential or work-wide windows can promote stress reduction and mental fatigue reduction. Second, experimentation with nature, sitting in gardens or urban park, listening to the birds or hearing the water sounds can provide stress relief and hedonic-like positive emotions. And finally, be active in nature. Parks and green areas offer opportunities for social interaction, which offer high levels of eudaimonic well-being in the long term. Walkability, as the second concept with the highest percentage of incidence, according to our research, is the oldest form of urban transport that has important benefits for mental well-being and health in general. Walking includes improvements in mental well-being demonstrated by cognitive and affective assessments, increasing levels of hedonic well-being, relaxation, and stress reduction. Evidence also shows that in communities that are highly walkable, residents can interact with their environment more regularly and feel more connected with the community, increasing individual tranquility, collective trust, and decreasing the perception of insecurity. With regard to density, the evidence is mixed. Although access to services is better in higher density environments, recent studies in southern Chile showed that areas with extreme vitality caused by high density generate low relationships between residents, as also high-rise buildings or narrower streets, causing stress and negatively affecting life satisfaction due to lost privacy and constant exposure to noise. Semi-detached and row housing typologies are evidences in this context as positive for mental well-being, because a clear differentiation between public and private spaces is achieved, offering greater tranquility, access to nature, and promote greater ties between residents. With regard to spatial design, evidence showed that quality of street design affects the extent to which the built environment promotes relaxation and reduction of anxiety in spaces. We state for shorter urban blocks based on the apparently benefits for doing so. Other elements, such as the trees on the streets and wide sidewalks or street frontage with high visibility facade, are related in promoting positive eudaimonic emotion and satisfaction with the environment. On the contrary, very long or monotonous street frontage without access along many meters or blind walls can create boredom and negative emotion in mental well-being of people. The built environment also has an important impact in promoting social interaction in public spaces, which can positively affect factors such as life satisfaction and eudaimonic well-being. Evidence showed that high visibility in public space and architectural sheds are related to a higher level of perceived social support and less distress. On the other hand, other evidence showed that living in places with extreme vitality, such as households in streets with greater intensity of vehicular use and high traffic jams, people interact less with their neighbors than those in less congested streets. Finally, several evidence show the exposure of chronic noise, such as the intersection of streets with high congestion or other noise sources, can reduce life satisfaction, increase stress, and reduce the perception of safety in public spaces. However, soundscape can positively increase mental well-being in environments. Many studies in this context suggest that there are sound marks that may be of cultural importance for to community and the self-protection. For example, the noise of birds, the sounds of water or wetlands tends to relax tensions and increase positive emotion in the environment. To conclude, the results of the present brief research review show that built environment studies are related to mental well-being are upward trend. In fact, in Latin America, this type of study is still very scarce, with very low percentage in countries such as Chile, Brazil, and Colombia in relation to thematic access such as walkability, green areas, and spatial design. Likewise, there's a predominance of research in environmental science, revealing an important disciplinary gap of this issue from social science disciplines, especially in geography and urban planning. Finally, it should be noted that urban planning and design can promote or discourage the presence of elements of the environment that impact positively on mental well-being. However, in Chile, urban planning instruments do not explicitly refer to mental well-being. Neither the General Town Planning and Construction Act, neither the traffic law or the land use regulatory plan. Therefore, it is observed not only an absence of urban policies that explicitly promote mental well-being, but also a lack of conceptualization of this term in urban planning instruments. Considering that mental well-being is defined as a fundamental right of every human being, and that the 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development seeks to promote the well-being in all ages in cities, it is very important to research in planning in Chile how the built environment affects mental well-being, providing empirical research from urban planning to public policies. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Antonio. Thank you very much for your compelling presentation. Now, like, you focus more on like an individual level of mental well-being, which I think is a nice contrast to what Jennifer has done. But I want to jump right now, to the next presentation, and we will have the Q&A afterwards. Let me briefly introduce our last speaker for today. It is Dr. Felix Fuders. He's a professor of economics in pre- and postgraduate courses at the Universitat Austral de Chile. He's an author and co-author of a series of publications on the issue of regional currency as a solution to global financial crisis on sustainable development. He has a wide variety of research interests, including ecological economics, ecosystem services, the European Central Bank, financial economics, economics and philosophy, human development theories, sustainability, and much, much more. Felix has sent us his presentation pre-recorded, and I will share the screen now with all of you. So let me just do that quickly as I have it ready. Okay, and then afterwards, we will jump into the Q&A.
Hi everyone, today I will talk about my favorite topic, money, and how it connects to the Sustainable Development Goals, and how this solution, which I will present, will also be a solution for the COVID pandemic, or a reaction to the COVID-19 pandemic. All but one goal of the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN are directly or indirectly connected to money. And it is not just that we need more money, but a different kind of money. Half of the SDGs have to do with inequality, and the other half with unsustainability in the strict sense. And this is what concerns the world today, not just in Chile, the inequality and the unsustainability of our lifestyles. And the problem is that money is not neutral, as conventional economic theory usually assumes. And the lacking monetary neutrality is caused by the design of our money. Money is supposed to be the blood of the economy. It has to circulate. And if the blood circulation stops, the body will die. The same is true with the circulation of money. If the money does not circulate, the economy will die. The problem is that we have two functions of money that contradict themselves. On the one side, it's supposed to circulate to facilitate the interchange of goods. On the other hand, we use it as a value that can be stored, for example, under the pillow. But if everyone stores money under the pillow, it cannot flow at the same time in the economy. The reason why we do not hoard money under the pillow is that we receive an incentive not to do it. This incentive we call interest. Interest is a reward to abstain from liquidity, or to come back to the metaphor of the blood of the economy. So if money is the blood of the economy, interest is the drug that maintains money circulating. And as any drug in the long time, if you abuse it, any drug in the long time, applied in the long time, will have heavily side effects. And this is what we can see. Actually, if we put money in a bank account, it will, after some time, have doubled. Even if the interest rate is very low, after some time, it will have doubled. And always if something doubles, then this is an exponential function. So 10 euros will be 20, then 40, then 80, and so on. And this is even true if we withdraw the money from the bank account, because it will appear in some other bank account in the economy. That means in the whole of the economy, all bank accounts taken together will show this exponential function. Well, and this is very difficult for us to understand what this really means. So to make it easier to understand, I usually use this, this example. Imagine Jesus had inherited just 1 cent from his father Joseph. And if he had put this money in a bank account with 5% annual interest rate, how much would this be today? The answer is, today that would be 400 billion planets Earth of pure gold. Now we can already start understanding that this system has to collapse and also bring about other heavily side effects, not just the collapse. Since there's no interest paying without debt, the total debt of the economy has to grow in a likewise manner as deposits. This is a mathematical fact. There is no interest without debt. If deposits grow, debt have to grow. And this is why any unit of money someone has on a bank account, someone else has to have as debt. And actually find this written on every dollar of the, every bill of the dollar. This now is legal tender for all debts, public and private. It's not to buy a car, food. It is to build infrastructure. It is to pay debt. Money is the counterpart of debt. And here we can see for the US money supply and debt that they develop exponentially and exactly the same. It's a mirror. It has to be the same because there's no interest paying without debt, or to say it in words of Nobel Prize winner Felix Fuders, money is a credit relation from which none can effectually escape. So we can now understand where inflation and price bubbles come from. If the money supply grows and the GDP does not grow in the same way, then this has to lead to inflation and speculation, which is nothing else than inflation on investment markets. And now we come to the point, unsustainability. The unsustainability has to do with the obligation to grow. We always have to grow and to grow and to grow. This is not understood in economics. We have to grow, and we have growth models, but we don't know why we have to grow. Why actually we have to grow? And this has to do with the debt which grows, which someone has to pay. And even if I'm not indebted as a business, maybe I'm lucky I don't have any foreign capital, so I have to grow because of inflation, and my employees want to be adjusted, to have adjustments in their salary. And even if I'm lucky, if they don't want, I still wouldn't want adjustments. I still have to grow because interest is the opportunity cost of any productive investment. If my business does not return a yield or yield a return that is at least as high what the bank would pay me, it does not make sense. I would close my business. So interest rate is the rhythm after which the economy has to dance, and not just a fetish. The problem is, as already Aristotle pointed out, it's impossible on a finite planet to grow infinitely. And as we know from first and second law of thermodynamics, we cannot produce something out of nothing. Everything we produce will end up as waste. So it's obvious that we destroy our environment. This is even true for renewable resources. Then if you keep on growing at a faster pace, then the reproduction rate of the natural renewable resources, we will also overexploit renewable resources. To put it in the word of Hermann Daly, anything in nature that does not reproduce itself, the rhythm of interest rate is a strong danger of extinction. And we can now understand where unemployment comes from. Not all businesses manage to grow, so some use other strategies. The other strategy would be to save money, to save costs. And so as to make the return on investment not go beyond interest as opportunity cost. So the most important cost position usually is the human workforce, and this is why there's a strong pressure to either grow or replace human workforce by machines. And if the machine is old, then the machine will have to look for a new job. And now we come to the second most important point, the poverty or inequality. If we have the deposit growing here, and we said already that debt has to grow in the likewise manner, so debt mirrors the money supply, and the difference from this point to this point, this is the wealth gap. This is the most important reason for unemployment, for inequality, in my opinion. If you can see this even in countries which are not supposed to be so unequal, like in Germany, if you see the financial assets and the debt, the difference is the inequality, and it's not just inequality, it's an unjust inequality, because someone receives not because of his own work and his own effort, but because of the effort of the one he gets indebted. Money does not work, nor does it have offspring. It's already Aristotle pointed out. We do not recognize this fact because we use money and capital as synonyms. How can we change this? German immigrant Silvio Gesell to Argentine 100 years ago saw the two financial crises in short times, and he saw that this has to do with money that does not circulate. The reason why money circulates today is the positive interest rate, and interest rate brings along the increasing deficits and debt. So the idea was, how can I make money flow without interest rate being necessary? So he said, we need bills that are like goods that perish. If bills were like good, you could not ask for interest. You were lucky someone takes it. So the idea is to make bills to perish as goods do. So you put some stamps on it, which is like 1% of the whole nominal value of the bill, which is almost nothing, but a good incentive to not to hoard the money too long time. So every month you have to put this stamp on it. And if you don't put it, it doesn't have any value. Strong incentive to either spend it, invest it, or make it, lend it for free. Well, this has been successfully applied in many cities. The most successful ones were Schwanenkirchen and Wörgl, when they pulled the cities out of the Great Depression. The bill we actually saw was a real bill that existed, and there have been also experiments in Liechtenstein, Switzerland, France, Spain, and 30 cities in the US. Even the dollar, there was supposed to be a dollar based on this idea, but the idea did not pass the Congress. Of course, today we would not have to put stamp scripts on bills. We could use electronic banknotes or cash card, anonymous cash cards with negative interest rate. The bills are nothing else than a negative interest rate, or make a monetary policy by central banks with negative rates, which the central banks actually trying, but not because they understood Silvio Gesell, but to foster the economy, which would be the contrary to what we want. There have been some working paper how to make this real negative interest rate policy in the idea of Silvio Gesell, and how to pass through the zero bond. That means how can really avoid that people hoard the cash under the pillow, because today the negative interest rate policy of the central bank does not work because people can still hoard money. Well, this idea would also probably evade financial crisis, which hit our economies every 50 to 80 years. This would not happen anymore. The crisis comes about because debts grow until there will be big default on a larger scale by many people, and banks go bankrupt. This would not happen anymore, and we would this way be more prepared for external shocks like COVID. For example, now we will have a strong economic crisis, a financial crisis soon, and people will blame COVID when in reality it has nothing to do with COVID, but was only triggered but not caused by COVID. And on the other way, it would also be a remedy to get out of the crisis. If we now changed our money to a money like Silvio Gesell proposed, with negative interest rates attached to the bill, then we would not need debt-based, expensive economic stimulus packages, indebting the countries, or printing money as the central bank of Europe or the Federal Reserve Bank right now do. This is how they blow up the money base even before COVID. Now they put a 1.3 billion euro liquidity bazooka into the market. So soon we'll have like a bubble that goes like this. And all this money, this printing money does not really serve because money is hoarded under the pillow. This is the cash hoarding in Europe. People use cash to hoard it under the pillow. And instead of printing ever more money of money that does not flow, we should use money that does flow. And so we would not need any more money or more debt, but only money that flows. And this has also been, and I'm very happy about this, mentioned or discussed by Senior Vice President and Economist of the Federal Reserve Bank in St. Louis. He called this hot money credit, which is nothing else than Silvio Excel money. In the end, I would like to make the bridge to the human scale development approach of my dear colleague Manfred Max-Neef, who I was asked to pay homage. He died, passed away last year in August, and one of his favorite, and he was got very famous because of his development human scale approach. This is a development based not on economic growth, but development defined as the satisfaction of fundamental human needs. Today, most of our growth, economic growth, does not go into development defined in the sense of satisfaction of fundamental human needs, but only to inequality. So if we want an economy where we are not obliged to grow, but on the other side, there would be no obstacle to grow. If we want to grow, in the sense that we need to satisfy some fundamental human needs, then we can grow. In this sense, 100% of eventual growth would turn into development, and we could come to what Herman Daly once called a steady state economy, even without any government intervention, in my opinion. Finally, let me end with some final reflections. Not all bad virtues will disappear, but today the bad virtues are fostered. Not every destruction of the environment will disappear, but today destruction is encouraged. And without effective negative rates, without neutral money, a sustainable future will not be possible. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Felix. I think you're now also live.
Can I share the screen? Because I've been asked to pay some homage to our dear colleague Manfred Max-Neef, and I would do this now, if I might share the screen. I don't know if there's some time.
No, please go ahead. We still have some time on our hand. Yeah.
I hope that this will work. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So last year there was died our dear colleague. Sorry. Last year died our dear colleague Manfred, and he was not only a great colleague and friend who gained the so-called alternative Nobel Prize, but also brought the Spring program to Chile. And well, I'm very, very, very sorry still, although this happened already a year ago that he died. Let me say some words to in homage to him. Personally, I'm convinced that we all have a special task in life, a task for which we are here on earth. And it is part of the commandment of neighborly love to use our talents. Let us remember Plato, who already philosophized about this, exhorting that each one should do his own thing. Zoom kuike, he called this. Thus, we form the great puzzle of love, in which each one of us is like a slice. If we do not use our talents, this puzzle will never be complete. And this is probably exactly what Manfred meant when he used to say goodbye to the Spring students at numerous graduation celebrations with the phrase, "Do what you have to do." Manfred did what he had to do most time of his life. He told me that when he had just started his career at Shell Company, listening to a Brahms symphony, an almost mystical incident happened. He came to the understanding, described above, that the meaning of life is not chromatistics, that is the desire to make money as an end in itself, which already ancient Aristotle severely criticized. But the idea is to serve the world, to serve the common good by doing his or her own thing. Manfred told me that it was from that moment on that he left his job in the multinational company Shell and began to combine his gift for music with economic theory, giving melody to the economy. Manfred was faithful to this ideal for the rest of his life. He did what he had to do. With his theories, he undoubtedly served and will continue to serve the common good, the world. His theory of greatest impact, in my opinion, is the theory called development at human scale. For the first time, this theory defines development based on a matrix of fundamental human needs, which is most important also for development planners, since it is supposed to be a tool to form a bridge between the status quo and the utopian perfect situation. And this helps us to know to which direction direct development. And contrary to the hegemonic vision, where the more is supposed to be always better, which is normally in textbooks in economics, one of the assumptions about consumer preferences. In the theory of human scale development, the needs are finite and the same all over the world and cultures. What changes from culture to culture is how to satisfy them. And this is great. Development is not defined by the existence of a few arbitrarily chosen artifacts or circumstances as an indicator for development, but by the degree to which these needs are satisfied. Development is therefore qualitative and not quantitative, subjective and not objective. Well, but Manfred was not only a great man whose ideas serve and will continue to serve the world, but also a great friend. Just when I arrived in Valdivia with my family, he made me feel welcome. Manfred opened the doors of his house to me in an extraordinary way. Only a few days after meeting me, and from there on, a deep, sincere, and beautiful friendship was formed. It was this friendship that made me feel at home, even so far from my home country, Germany. I really miss him. With Manfred, I lost a guide, a colleague, a great friend. I feel privileged to have met Manfred, not only because of his academic legacy, but also because of the extraordinary personality that characterized him. Thank you, Manfred.
Thank you, Felix, for these kind words about your colleague and friend. I will now open the Q&A with all three of the presenters. So if all three of you, Jennifer, Antonio, and Felix could have switch on the cameras. I will still take questions via private chat to me if people want to ask certain questions, but I want to start with a comment that I have received from Einhard Schmidt-Kallet, who wants to let know that he's writing, "Let me reiterate what I commented some time ago on Felix' writings. I hope that in the future, Spring alumni will incorporate the ideas of local money and negative interest rates into integrated regional and local development scenarios." So there's a clear support for your ideas and writings. But I also have a direct question that comes from Anne Weber, who is asking also to Felix directly, do you have any idea how the money stored under the pillow can now be taken up in the money circle to support those who are right now suffering of COVID-19 or the pandemic? Felix?
Yes, actually, yeah. This is the idea of that helped Silvio Gesell to make money circulate. That it not be possible to hoard at least too long under the pillow. And if we change the money to such a money as Silvio Gesell proposed, which has a negative interest rate attached to the bills, then the money would circulate and it automatically would get to those who mostly needed it. It would be easier to get credits and it would be easier to gain money and to spend it. It would circulate easier, yes. And it would not be hoarded under the pillow, and it would be not necessary as today to take up huge loans for the governments, like Germany is like getting 5 times more, they're putting like 5 times more money into circulation by the government, by fiscal policy, than in the last big crisis, 2008. It would not be, and of course on debt, this would not be necessary if we had, at least not at that scale, if we had money that circulates by itself. And then we had money that serves people, that serves the economy, and not serves accumulation.
Thank you very much for the clarification and the further details. I was very impressed by the diversity of your presentations of all three of you, with Jennifer talking more on a global and city level, Antonio with the individual take on mental well-being, and Felix with like a more systemic economic look on it that is far beyond what I can comprehend so far, but a great input, and I think there's a lot to talk about still. I would still see that a lot of the things you talked about, all three of you, pointed to issues that we have all experienced already before the whole pandemic hit the world on different levels. That's why I want to target my question first to Jennifer as well. When we talk about building back better, as the session has talked, is it really about building back even better, or should we rather talk about something else but building back? What's your take on that more abstract conceptual question?
Oh, that's a philosophical question for us here. I guess it depends on what you mean by building. I mean, if it's about integrating nature, we've talked a little bit internally within WWF about, pulling out our shovels and knocking down the streets and planting trees, and really thinking how we can design our cities. That might not be the right answer everywhere, obviously, and it's certainly not that easy, but just for kind of a visual perspective. But I mean, I think building has to be much more than just buildings and roads. We've talked a lot about natural infrastructure. At WWF, our colleagues in South Africa have been pushing very strongly on the topic of natural infrastructure, especially as their cities start to grow quite quickly. I mean, Africa has one of the fastest urbanization rates right now. So how can we demonstrate to planners and to local politicians the bankability, the financial value of urban nature, or just kind of a more collective thinking? And I think also when we talk a lot about transportation, also increasingly, especially in a post-COVID world, where we do want to advocate for public transportation, but we also understand the need to respect social distancing rules. So, where possible, can we kind of push for stronger cycling infrastructure? And we've seen this happening in cities, and not just cities in Northern Europe, but cities all over the world, from Uganda to the Philippines to Colombia to Chile, etc. And so I think this is, let's keep this momentum. Let's demonstrate the value. And I know that C40, one of the larger city networks, coined this concept called the 15-minute city. And the idea of the 15-minute city is everything walkable or bikeable within 15 minutes, most activities that you would need on a daily lifestyle. So you can allow local businesses to economically recover, that you can reconnect with your community, this sort of idea of living close and living connected. So yeah, what are we actually talking about when we talk about building, building change, perhaps?
Thank you very much for the, again, great overview about all the challenges that still might be ahead, or the opportunities, as you also called them in your presentation. Maybe bridging the gap now to Antonio, picking up on something that Jennifer just said. But like when we talk then about mental well-being, that is, as you presented, very connected maybe to the built environment and impacted by that. And a lot of the things that you talked about was like public space is important and walkability and things that are out in the open, right? But how do you think is that maybe in conflict with issues of social distancing and like things that are getting implemented by cities and national governments at the moment? And how can we solve that conflict maybe in the future and for pandemic preparedness?
Thank you. I think this situation of pandemic around the world has demonstrated that cities and governments were not prepared to front a pandemic or pandemic, and And this is a really interesting thing because there are many evidences about the relevance of sustainable cities or healthy cities. This comes from longer term. So I think I shared the same opinion of Jennifer that the building could be understood as change, but also as an opportunity. This pandemic is an opportunity for planners, especially, to rethink how we think cities and public spaces. And according to this, I think all public spaces have to be rethink in the, how is the, from my discipline, from urban design, which is the minimum distance or healthy distance in a sidewalk, for instance. Or we need to invest more in parks, urban parks. In Chile, there's in our cities are many greening, especially in Valdivia, for instance, but our other cities, there's less impacts on urban parks. So I think we need to invest in new public space infrastructure, but linking to urban parks, rethink from the local law also how we can transform the minimal size of the sidewalks and how to rethink also the use of the streets. I think it's a great opportunity, the pandemics, to prepare the city for future pandemics, but also the make it healthier needs to be linked to this change or this opportunity, not only for professional health.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying a bit more. Jumping now to Felix again, I want to kind of like the things that Jennifer and Antonio talked about are developments in the urban sector that probably need also some financing, right? Nothing comes for free. And I'm not an economist here at all. That's like still like magic to me sometimes, right? So maybe beyond your topic of local money, or also connected to it, how do you think these advancements that we need to make in the future, how can they be financed, especially in times of municipalities across the world, but especially also in the global south, not having necessarily the financial resources to do what maybe their mandate should be?
Well, many times it is not that there's a lack of money in the economy. It's a lack of distribution of the money and a lack of money that circulates. As I tried to explain, many of the money, big parts of the money are stored under the pillow and does not serve to facilitate the exchange of goods and services. And if we change this, money would flow easily, and lots easily there would be credits to be given. And in this sense, it served the development. Actually, today, we are looking for economic growth, and we need to grow since interest rate is the opportunity cost of any productive investment. If my company does not yield a return at least as high as the bank would pay us, we wouldn't do it. This is why we have to grow and to grow and to grow. But most of the growth does not really serve the people. It does not go into development. It goes into inequality. And even actually an unjust inequality, because people gain on the work of others, of those who get indebted, invest the money productively and have to pay the interest of others. We could change this. This could be different. Would be that in an economy that any eventual growth would go into development. We would not have to grow, but if we want to grow, we could grow. There's no obstacle to grow. If there are lack of satisfaction of fundamental human needs, yeah, we can grow. But we would only grow if we have to grow to satisfy fundamental human needs. And today is not the case. We grow to produce inequality, and very few of the growth really serves to development. And to some, it come back to your question, yes, with a different financial system, there would be easier credits and financing for infrastructure or necessary projects. Anne has a question, I think.
Felix, Moritz, you're on mute. You have to open your...
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much. The classic Zoom mistake of the year. We are very close to closing down, but there were still some questions coming in right now. That's why I just want to... question for Felix. I take two more questions. One question is for Felix here. From where the resistance will come to implement a negative interest capital / money, will it decrease inequality?
It will, as I tried to explain, decrease inequality. Would make a society more equal. Actually, I'm convinced that the most important reason for the huge inequality, the rampant inequality we see, is this system, which makes deposit grow and debt grow in a likewise manner and exponentially. And the gap is the inequality. And we see this everywhere in the world. All countries have a huge inequality. In some countries, with government intervention, they manage to decrease the inequality and improve the Gini index and the inequality index, but it's like symptom curing. Before taxes and transfers, the inequality is almost as high everywhere in the world. And this is because of this system. And the forces which will probably not want to change something are those who gain from the system right now, which are those who receive interests. They want to keep on receiving it. But actually, this is a very few people. Most people, the very vast majority, does not gain with the actual system. Even if we have some interest gaining on our deposits, we have paid them 3 or 4 times ourselves because interests are included in prices. And everything we buy, even if we are not indebted, we pay interests. 70%, 50 to 70% of the price of a product is interest. So we pay interests even though we are not indebted. And netto winners are only those who have like 1.5 million euros on a bank account. Then you're a winner of the system. Most people are not, and most people pay more interest than they receive. But well, those who gain with it are very powerful and have have a good lobby. And they can easily make people say, no, the system, I don't like it. I want money I want to store it. We want to store it. Everyone wants to store. We have this preference for liquidity, as Keynes called it. We want to save up money. We don't want money that loses value. We want to store it. Well, but the bad part of it, then the only way to make it circulated interest is interest, and this makes at the end some getting rich at the expenses of others, which unfortunately we do not see because we take capital and money as synonyms. And if you believe that money is a production factor, it's capital, then we cannot see that there's a difference between gaining interest from borrowing money or producing a good like this one and sell it with a gain.
Thank you once again. And now last question directed to Jennifer, probably. Somebody asked, we see an increasing trend in migration of people affected by climate change related disaster to cities. How do we prepare cities to address this?
Address increasing migration.
Yeah, how do we address, that's how I understand it, how do we address the increasing trend of migration that that is caused by natural disasters linked to climate change again?
Absolutely. Well, I think I would say it's a complex answer. All of these issues are, so they're layered. There's not one answer for any of this. Part of it is about making sure that the local authorities, from the mayor to the civil servants, are really informed of this issue. In some parts of the world they are, in some parts we need to continue working on that. It's about revising city plans. You guys are the planners, not me, but we know how important plans are in terms of helping to design your city. Where can you develop your city? What is needed? Is it more housing? Is it more infrastructure? Is it more public space and green spaces so that we can have, improving access? Is it about satellite cities as well? So we have to kind of think both at the national and even regional scale, but then also, take it to the cities and the streets. From WWF's perspective, we do work quite closely with local governments on doing their basic data reporting so that we can get a baseline of where they are and where they want to go in their own climate plans. But certainly as cities are growing, and we've seen these trends. So we have the most urbanized region in the world being Latin America. We have Asia, which is really growing quite quickly. And the next place that is up and coming is Africa. So we have to kind of be ready for this so that we can have places for people to grow into. And I think, planning combined with policy, combined with education. I think education from universities to school age education. We have a program run by the WWF Sweden office, but including countries in Bolivia, in Philippines, in Uganda, I think in Indonesia as well. I can't remember all the countries, but it's called Our City 2030. And we work with school age children to envision what kind of city do they want to become an adult into. Now this started about 5 years ago, so there was 15 years. Now it's only 10 years away, 2030, it's very close. But we worked with them in a 6-month program to kind of, think clean slate. They haven't been through university. They haven't been too much into the world and have all its negativity or its bias, but just think really creatively, throw the Legos on the table and envision what kind of city do you want to live in. So we work with it. Why is that important? Well, access to water, access to clean air, access to, especially from a Swedish point of view, not having over consumption that is coming from other parts of the world. So combining these different areas and then putting them actually to create models of what they want to do. And then we invite in local business leaders, we invite in local city leaders, whether it's politicians, whether it's department directors, and then the students can present their work. And it's actually quite interesting because they haven't gone through all the educational programs we've gone through yet. So they are quite creative in their approaches. And I think this is sort of, helping everyone realize that this isn't all hands on deck situation. For us at WWF, I think I said this already, but our motto is together possible. And that has a lot of meaning because this is something that we all have to realize together. And I think I would just end maybe to say our friends at the Nature Conservancy have really worked a lot in this area, also in terms of looking at floodplains, looking at nature reserves in cities, what areas do need to really be protected, where can we grow into cities? So it's sometimes maybe it's redeveloping brownfields that are no longer being used. How can we reuse old buildings and give them new life? So many different ideas all together. It's a complex issue for sure, but a very important one.
No, totally agree. Thank you again for the big summary again. I will close this Q&A now for now. I'm sorry that I couldn't get to all the questions that came through the chat, but we are running late already a little bit. And there's still, Mahmouda, as far as I know, still wants to say something, but just let me wrap up quickly what we learned today, which was a wide variety of topics where we talked about general Build Back Better was the overview, but we saw very different levels of engagement with topics from the individual mental well-being to various issues on city level, and especially regarding sustainable development and systemic questions of the economy, of financial aspects that I still don't fully understand, but it's very intriguing. I think what I took away from that is that a lot of the topics that we talked about are particularly urban, as Jennifer pointed out, that also COVID is very urban as of a pandemic. The challenges that we are facing as a global society are inherently urban and becoming even more urban. We have many challenges ahead, but these are now also opportunities to maybe not just build back better, but like create something new, something more just, something more sustainable for all humans, but also non-humans on this planet. I think it shows that all the responses to the pandemic, but also other challenges like climate change, are highly complex, are fought on many levels, hands-on stuff that Jennifer just talked about with the children, but very complex systemic changes that are more related to what Felix was talking about. I took away that a lot of the issues are related to public space, be it individual well-being, be it sustainability, be it livability of cities. Mobility is a key issue, and questions of growth of cities, growth of economies, whatever. I'm sure these topics will come up again over the next 2 days, and I think we had a very strong and eclectic mix of presentation and speakers. So thank you very much again, Antonio, Jennifer, and Felix. Hope to see you soon somewhere in this digital world. And so yeah, everybody is allowed to clap digitally with Zoom. And Mahmouda, if you have any last words, the stage is yours now.
Thank you, Moritz, for really bringing all these three presentations together in a very, very nice manner. I think time and again, we realize that our role as planners is essentially basically dealing with lives. But I think in tomorrow's workshop sessions, we will be able to tackle this in more depth with different angles. Tomorrow is our second day. We have workshop sessions tomorrow. Unfortunately, they're limited because we want very active participation in them, but they will be available on Sunday on the YouTube channel of Alumni Deutschland. The link will be on our website, and I will share it with you also. I just want to quickly thank our ever-supporting professors, Dr. Anna Weber, Professor Wolfgang Scholz, and Professor Einhard Schmidt. And of course, all you lovely participants who decided to join us today. Thank you so much for your time. I would request everybody to smile for a bit because we would like to take a screenshot. So all this, all the speakers, if you're just there, Edmir is going to take a screenshot now. So thank you. See you tomorrow and day after. Take care, stay safe, and see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.